3 of GMAT Club MBA Spotlight, October 2020 edition. As I mentioned yesterday, we have 24 of the top 10 schools coming to you and to talk about their program. We have current students, alums talking about their experiences, both during and after the MBA. So stay tuned for all of that content, but quickly jumping in today because we are a little 2 minutes late. We have here with us ESA. We have Paula, who heads admissions at ESA, and we also have Laura, who graduated very recently and is now in Puerto Rico. So I'll let you to introduce yourself real quick.
Okay, thanks, Avik. Hello, everyone. I'm Paula. I'm the head of admissions for a full-time MBA and our master in management here at ESA. I'm also a graduate from the program, so I graduated in the class of 2016. So it's been 4 years that I've been working with the school. So after my graduation, I already started working in admissions. I was previously covering Latin America and based in our Sao Paulo campus. And then this year I took over as the director, and I'm here based in Barcelona. And I have here Laura. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura. I just graduated. I'm back in the real world as of May 2020. And I am now in Puerto Rico, as you heard before, starting a new company, Vital. So if you want to reach me for details about that later, I'll let you. But before the MBA, before I went to ESA, I was in California, in San Francisco with Bitly, doing strategic marketing and communications for them. And before that, I spent some time at Mozilla, the maker of the Firefox browser, also doing some communications for the Americas. And I loved my MBA experience, and I'm really excited to tell you guys about it.
Nice. Okay, so my objective is to be as quick as I can so we can have more time for questions to Laura. So I'll start my the way that I always like to start, that is talking about ESA's mission, because this is something very central in the school, in the institution in general. We are a mission-driven school, so this means that we were created with the goal of making the world a better place through leaders that would be more ethical, more socially responsible, and that would want to have a positive and lasting impact in the world, in people, in society, in the environment, through some underlying values that we have at the school, that is professionalism, integrity, and spirit of service. So this means that we are looking for people that align with this mission and that shows these values in their personal and professional lives. Just a quick a snapshot on our class profile. We are a fairly small school. It will always depend to whom you're comparing yourselves to. If you compare ourselves with the American schools, we tend to be smaller. So we are 350 students, split into usually 5 sections of 70. Now with the social distancing rules, we split the students into 7 sections of 50 students. We are 85% of the students come from outside of Spain. Average age 29 years old, with 5 to 6 years of work experience on average. So we have a range. We advise students to have at least 3 years of work experience. We know we have the consultants with 2.5 years, and that's okay. And we don't have a maximum. 680 average GMAT with 30% women. And then in terms of the split of the regions, we try to have a very balanced split around the world, so we can be the diverse school that we pride ourselves to be. So we have 30% of Europeans, 20-something% of Latin Americans, 20 North Americans, 25 from Asia Pacific, and then 5% rest of the world. And this accounts for more than 50 nationalities on campus. We are a 15 to 19 month program that will depend on the track that you choose. And this is a decision that you actually have to make after you start your MBA. So you don't have to commit to that before classes start. For those that don't speak Spanish, we have Spanish classes throughout the program. We start the program with intensive Spanish classes of 2 weeks in August. And then for the first 10 months, starting in September, we have the core courses. And these are the very typical MBA courses, marketing, leadership, finance, strategy, and so on. And during these 10 months, we pretty much work as a high school, okay? So you're gonna have your section, you're gonna have, and every section has the same courses throughout these first 10 months, okay? So it's the mandatories, nobody has any waiver, no matter your background, because the idea here is to really is for the students to really support each other, right? So the peer-to-peer learning at IESE is very important. We use the case methodology that I'm going to talk about a little bit more later. And it's very important that the people that come with a higher expertise in some subjects supports the ones that still don't have that knowledge, right? And that's how that spirit of service and that collaboration that I spoke on in the same slide becomes very strategic and actually essential. If you choose after the first 10 months where everybody's having the same classes, you decide if you're gonna go on the 15 or the 19 months. If you go for the 15, and during the summer, you have the electives. So you stay at IESE having classes. When summer is over, you come back, and then you have your last term of classes. During this last term, you can choose to either stay at IESE and do the classes here, or do an exchange program in another business school that we have partnership with over 30 schools all over the world. We have it in Asia, we have it in Europe, we have 2 in Latin America, but most of them are in the United States. And then the classes are over in December. If you choose to go for the summer internship, for the 19-month track during the summer, you will be doing a corporate internship in a company in anywhere in the world. It doesn't have to be Spain. You have another alternative that is doing the summer entrepreneurship experience. So you stay at IESE developing your own business idea with the support of the IESE entrepreneurial community. So you have entrepreneurship faculty, professors, entrepreneurs themselves, venture capitalists, so they can guide you and mentor you through the process. The idea here is not to have a company built by the end of summer, because at the end, that's not how business are created in 3 months, but it's to have the entrepreneurial experience and learn about the lean startup methodology, okay? And then when summer is over, we come back to the 2 last terms of classes, which are the electives as well. You also can choose to have one of the terms as your international exchange program. And another international opportunity that I find very special that IESE can provide our students with is the overseas modules. So the overseas modules, they are 2 weeks of intensive classes that in August, so before the 4th term, they can happen in New York or Sao Paulo. There are 2 of our campuses. And in January, before the start of the last term, you can go to Nairobi or Shanghai. So the idea of these modules is to really expose our students to the corporate culture of each of these 4 cities that are very particular, no? And then in some of the modules, you get to work with local companies in a consulting project. So it's a very complete experience. And then everybody graduates in May. So this is why it's not different. It's not 2 different programs. It's just the duration and the length of the program that is a bit different. But we want everybody to feel that they are part of the same class. And in the second year, in the electives, we have more than 130 electives that you can choose from. And this is something new that we have just included in the program that we're calling the concentrations. So if there's any big area of knowledge that you want to specialize your MBA, you can choose to do some of these subjects in one of these 4 concentrations, and your diploma will come out with concentration in international business or concentration in data analytics and digital business and so on. If you don't want to have any concentration because you want to do several subjects, not necessarily in one single topic, it's okay too. Your diploma will come out as a general management diploma, okay? Which, no harm and no judgment in that. That's actually what I did. I didn't concentrate in anything. And then as I was saying before, the case method is one of the crucial parts of IESE and really what sets us apart. We put here that 80% of our content is delivered through the case method. Being an alumni myself and having been a student, I think that Laura can agree to that. The real feeling is that it's 130% of our time that is actually delivered through the case method. So it means that every opportunity that the professors have to have a class based on a case discussion, it will be a case discussion, okay? So that makes everything much more practical. It really, the idea is for our students to exercise the decision-making skill, right? Because at the end, what a case is a problem, a business problem that someone in a real company, in a real moment in time, had to solve, right? So you have to put yourself in the shoes of that person. You read several pages of context and information about the company, and the country and the context that they are living in. Then at the end, you have tables, graphs, P&Ls, pictures, anything for you to analyze the situation even better and take a decision. You do this by yourself. Then you go to campus. Well, now the team meetings are actually happening online because of social distancing. But in normal times, you go, you meet with your team on campus. This team is a team that is formed by 8 to 10 people, and it's a team assigned by IESE, so we can guarantee diversity in terms of backgrounds, nationality, profiles in general. So you can really have different perspectives when tackling a business problem, right? Because it's one thing for me as a Brazilian with management consulting experience, being an industrial engineer, coming with my experience and looking at a problem, and then all the other 7 people in my team coming from India, Chile, Spain, China, Taiwan, Poland, and the United States, with different backgrounds, they will have a different approach to the problem, right? And this will actually increase your toolbox, and you will see that your perspective is just one perspective among many others, right? And there are a lot of skills that you develop in that environment. And then after you discuss the cases with your team, then you go into the classroom, then you discuss with the rest of the class. So you have several steps that your knowledge will just become richer and richer, and that's why also the spirit of service is so important, because we really want people that come to be willing to share their previous experience, to be willing to contribute to each other's, to other people's development, because we're really relying that the biggest growth and development that we have happens through our peers. This is a typical day at IESE. As you can see, there are not a lot of free time. So IESE is a very demanding school in terms of academics, okay? Because there's a lot of case preparation that is demanded from us before we get to the classroom. But we can, maybe Laura can develop a bit more on how her IESE experience was in a bit. So the Career Development Center, we have a very big team that is structured by industry. So depending on the industry that you're interested in going to after the MBA, you will have a focal point inside the Career Development Center. So these directors are responsible for the business development with companies. So they go and they build this relationship to bring job postings and job opportunities for our students and networking opportunities as well. And other than industries, the team is also structured in terms of regions. So if you want to go back to your home country after the MBA, you're not staying in Europe, you will have support because we have directors that are also doing this business development in each of these regions. This is a split in terms of geography. I highly recommend you to download the employment report that we have in the website, very, very detailed. This is just for you to see that there is some sort of concentration after the MBA in Europe. So 63% of our students in the class of 2019 stayed here after. It's not easy, so it's good to align expectations if this is something that you're planning to do. It's probably your best chance if you are coming from abroad or outside of Europe and you plan to stay. Doing an MBA in a top school is probably the best way to get it, but it's not guaranteed and you will demand a lot of resilience. Yeah. This is how the split in terms of sector. So the first one is consulting, followed by tech, which has been growing a lot in the last years. Then financial services and industry with 21%. And then industry is just everything that is not consulting, tech, and finance. Okay. One of the biggest events that the Career Development Center organizes is the Career Forum. It happens twice a year, once in October. So this was the companies that came in our last in-person edition. There was October last year, which I saw this slide today, and it's crazy that it's been a year already, that time flies. And then there's another edition that happens in February. And now the career forums are happening online, okay? And companies are very adapted to that. Like very fast in the admissions process. These are the deadlines. Our next deadline is January 5th. In terms of tuition, the tuition is a bit less than 90,000 euros for the 15 or 19 month duration. Okay, so it's the 2 years. We have partnerships with both Banco Sabadell and Prodigy Finance for you to fund your MBA. And we also have scholarships that you can apply and that will range from 10 to 50%. For you to apply to a scholarship is basically just a scholarship essay that you have to answer. Why do you think you deserve a scholarship? And in terms of other essays, we have 2 mandatory essays and 1 extra essay that is optional. And the idea with admission process is really to get to know you as a person, because we know that we are admitting not only a CV, but a human being, a complete human being, you know? And we take a very personalized approach to our admission process. So we highly incentivize you to get in touch and be close to us and really introduce yourself. Okay, guys, so enough of me. Now I have Laura here that has already introduced herself. Laura, I don't know, so Vic, do you want to come back and with some questions, or should I just ask one question that I always like to ask our alumni, is on why did you decide to do an MBA and why did you choose IESE?
All right, so I love this question, right? Because why I decided to do an MBA while I was in the middle of a very nice, very lucrative career in San Francisco that was going places, you know, is a question that I get a lot. And I guess it comes down to, you know, you're on this track, right? You've probably been a professional now for about 10 years or so, or maybe a little bit less, 5 to 10 years. And you can, there's an analogy that a professor uses at IESE that you can flow on this river, right? Or you can just shift course and decide what it is that you want to do with your life and actually choose, the river that you want to float on. And so that's kind of an explanation that's very close to me, because that's basically what it was, right? I had been in San Francisco. I could see that path ahead of me, but my husband and I, in the end, chose something a little bit different that really spoke to finding our passions, and we knew that one of them was going to live in Europe, specifically in Spain, was a dream that we had for a while. And so in my case, I really only applied to business schools in Spain, because the MBA was kind of a means to that, not to the end of living in Spain, but also having this life-changing experience that would put me on the path, whatever it was. At that moment, I thought it was travel. It ended up not being that industry. It would put me on that path that I truly felt passionate about. And in the end, I think that when I looked at the schools in Spain, IESE really stood out to me, because it was clear that although there is a very, you're going to find tons of people that are in investment banking and in consulting and all of this, there is also very much room to do whatever it is that you are passionate about doing, and a group of people that is supporting that. And you just feel like whoever you are, you can be at IESE, and you feel very at ease with this group of people that is supporting you in finding what your path is. So I think that credit goes also to career services, and also the peers that you meet and the kinds of networking, speakers that come to the school, and all of that you can kind of grasp from the outside. And so that really motivated me to choose IESE in the end. It felt like a supportive community that could really help me go into whatever that path that was right for me was. And it ended up being entrepreneurship. So.
Nice. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Yes, Paula, I have a ton of questions. I'd love to get some of those both from Laura and you. Laura, quick question for you. You mentioned that, you were playing with the idea of not only moving to Spain, but also shift from marketing tech to entrepreneurship or anything else. Did you know that going in? I've heard the statistic that IESE produces a ton of entrepreneurs. But did you know that you're going to be an entrepreneur either in the travel space that you sort of alluded to, or anywhere else in particular?
Not at all. I think, the way that I grew up and the interactions I had with the professional world was kind of gave me the idea that I wasn't really cut out for that I had this very secure path that was very nice. And I had a great experience in the corporate world, really. But including in the travel sector, I knew that I probably wanted to join a startup, but I didn't necessarily think that I wanted to start a startup. And so it wasn't really something that I expected until I took my first year entrepreneurship class. It's kind of an intro to entrepreneurship course in the third term. And we were encouraged to just, to pitch an idea and to kind of keep working on it and think about the value propositions. And it really kind of unblocked this idea that entrepreneurship was something for other people, and that I wasn't cut out for it. What IESE does, and I think what the core curriculum does really well, is give you the tools to let you decide that for yourself,
Right.
And give you the tools to make that a possibility for yourself. And that was extremely valuable.
Awesome. From my understanding, a significant proportion of the class at IESE is not from Spain. Would you say that's a correct assumption? So tell me a little bit more about that adjustment. What did you do at IESE in a non-professional, non-academic context? How did you integrate a new life in Spain? You mentioned you always wanted to live in Europe. But also, what are some of the social clubs type thing that you do on a day-to-day basis and in IESE that somewhat shapes that experience?
That's a great question, because I think it captures so much of what's valuable about IESE. So as you heard from Paula, there really is very little. You can fill your time very, very, very easily with all of the clubs, not only the classes, which trust me, they will fill your time, and the cases, but all of the clubs you have, all of the possibilities, networking events, career service stuff. And I have the added complication / it's a blessing. I love it of having my family there, my husband. And I don't have kids, but I met a lot of people that had kids. And so this was, you have to just choose your priorities and stuff. But I think that what was easy is that there was encouraged like a social atmosphere on campus and among the students of supporting each other. And that meant that you had this array of dinners and stuff to do, but you also felt very social within the classroom and within the people that you met. That said, some of the clubs that I really enjoyed and the events that I really enjoyed were, for example, the dinner club. So the different cultural clubs, like the Peruvian club or the Mexican or Japanese club, would host these dinners. So you had Japanese dinner, one night in October, and then another night in November was the Mexican dinner. And these tickets would sell out so quickly, by the way, but basically, like, you had these multiple opportunities to go and hang out and experience someone else's culture. And yeah, I think it was a really, really great way to bond. I love bonding over food. So those cultural clubs were definitely a big part of the experience. For me, the Responsible Business Club, which I really enjoyed. It is a professional club, but there's also a social aspect. They work also quite a bit with the Social Action Club, where you get to do volunteering, which is, by the way, a great way to de-stress and decompress, to put your focus on someone else for a little bit. So those kinds of opportunities, which is just, there were so many that whatever fits your schedule, just grab onto one of them, one of these social opportunities. Don't feel the need to attend all of them, because that atmosphere of being in this together was really anyway felt in your day-to-day in the classroom.
Awesome. Paula, quick question for you, and Laura, feel free to chime in as you see fit. You mentioned some of the recruiting and industry stats in your presentation. So I wanted to check with you on some of the recruiting trends that you've been seeing. So I went to a business school in North America, and I felt that business schools have sort of shifted from a heavy finance and a heavy consulting focus to tech and like various functions in tech. What are some of the recruiting trends that you've been seeing in Europe or ESA in particular?
Yeah. So I'm actually just gonna take advantage of what you said, because tech has been growing a lot. Just for you to have an idea, in our previous years in the employment report, tech was not even a sector on its own, right? It was inside industry. But in the past 3 years, we've seen like a very fast increase in tech. It is true that it's very driven by Amazon. Amazon is a heavy recruiter in MBAs in general, and IESE is the number 2 after McKinsey. So other than that, we have been seeing a lot of startups. So we've recently also added a startup career fair. So it's precisely to tap on this need of more students wanting to go into startups, right? And not only the big techs, but also wanting to have a bigger impact in smaller companies, right? So a lot of our trends is actually driven by the students, right? So we adapt all our resources according to what the students have been showing that they are interested in. And the Startup Career Fair, I think it's a good example of that.
Laura, where do you see your friends going post-MBA? Where did most of them go, the ones who did not decide to pursue a startup journey?
A lot of consultants. So if you look at my LinkedIn, I was browsing my LinkedIn, feed or whatever for a little bit, and lots of people going to McKinsey, lots of people going to Deloitte. Lots of rotational programs as well, and Novartis is one that I can think of from my teammates. And a lot of Amazon, lots of, as Paula was just touching on, a lot of people going to Amazon. And it's kind of amazing, you know, when you're in the program. I was there for 2 years, but for however long you're focused on networking with, you know, the people that come outside to recruit at IESE and everything. And now, after the MBA is done, you start to realize that the network that you created there, like people that were in the classroom with you, are like, oh my gosh, these people are like geniuses now, and they're hotshots, you know, in their fields. And it's been really fun to see your peers kind of rise up. It's just become this incredible, brilliant network for each other.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that. So I know that ESA is super diverse just by, you know, by its own efforts. It's also like a self-fulfilling prophecy sort of a thing. How does that diversity play into the student experiences? And would love to have a specific example for you in your close social circle. How diverse was it? Did you only hang out with most Americans, or did you branch out with other folks? How did your social group look like?
So not at all. It's funny that you asked that, because just this Sunday I had another reunion with my team, just like a little catch-up meeting. And I would say that everyone's team experience is slightly different, but I got really, really, really lucky with my team. We were on the same page, and we really, really respected each other and really just enjoyed each other's company. So that was among my strongest social circles. And just to give you the example, that was one German, 2 Spanish guys, although, you know, if you know Spanish politics, don't put them and they're not from the same region, so don't put them in the same category. 1 Brazilian, 1 Mexican, 1 Korean, 1 woman from Hong Kong, and 1 Bulgarian, and then myself from Puerto Rico. So super diverse, like really all around the globe. And we, you know, for me, it was 9:30 in the morning, which for a Sunday is kind of early, but it was worth it because we were literally all around the world trying to connect and keep in touch with each other. I think that a funny thing about the American group specifically is that if you're an American, right, and you have this option of going to the MBAs in the US, but you choose to go to Barcelona, to go to IESE, the group that self-selects into that kind of experience that's a little bit off the beaten path or a little bit different, just tends to be very willing to embrace a lot of cultures. We don't want to hang out with Americans. That's what we've been doing. We could have gone to Kellogg or whatever to keep doing that. But we chose to go to IESE precisely because we have this opportunity to interact with other people. And that's something that I can say was true for Americans across the board. Not to mean that I didn't hang out with them, because I did. It's always fun but it was more of a, let's share our culture. You know, I know that there's like an American Thanksgiving celebration that takes place every year on campus, and we would invite, you know, all our friends that are curious about what the heck that is to campus. So it's more about sharing our culture rather than keeping in our little cliques.
Awesome. Paul, I just wanted to squeeze in a question about admission that I'm seeing on the comments. You mentioned the different rounds, and IESE has a ton of different rounds, right? So a general natural question is it beneficial to apply in round 1? Is there a specific time where you'd like to see most applications? And, you know, tying into that question, I know you had a slide on that, but how important really are test scores, especially in this last season where testing has been very challenging with GMAT and GRE moving online and so on and so forth?
Yes. Well, I think that challenging has been the top word in everybody's mind lately.
Sure.
But about the rounds, it is true that the earlier you apply, the better, right? Because we have 350 seats. We don't have quotas per round, so it's not that I'm gonna admit 20% in the 5 rounds that we have. So it means that the earlier you apply, well, you're going to be compared to less people and more seats available. we, in terms of scholarship, in the beginning, we feel very rich because we have all our scholarship money untouched. Sure. And that as rounds go by, like seats are filled up and the scholarship money is allocated, and things tend to become more competitive at the end, right? Right. It's true that we understand that the regions have different behaviors. So if you're coming from certain regions that typically apply earlier, we already expect, for example, Europeans to apply a bit later. So we kind of account for that, right? But I would always recommend people to apply the earlier the better. And in terms of the scores, I think that, yes, it's been challenging, we know. I think that by now, we already feel, because we can see that the GMATs and the GREs, on the online and GMATs and GREs that have been arriving now are better than the online ones that arrived in the very beginning when these versions were launched. So we also understand that there was a learning curve for the candidates, and they are reaching normality, right? Sure. But at the end, I think I've mentioned in the presentation, we do take a very personalized approach to our admission process. I remember, Laura, from our assessment day in New York, I was in Sao Paulo, but I flew to New York. So we had the assessment day. That is another step in the admission process. That is basically a group dynamic for us to get to know the candidates in a different setting, right? So the GMAT and the GRE, they are apart, and it's an important part because it's the only aspect of someone's application that can be compared across candidates, right? So that will always be important. But we do consider that in the complete context, right? So it's not, it can sound a bit cliche, but we do take it very holistically, our candidate's application, and we tend to know every candidate that apply. No? Like when I was responsible for Latin America, I used to already know 80% of everyone that applied.
Yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense. Thanks for that. We are sort of running towards the end of the session. Laura, I did have one question for you to end the session today, but I did get one other question that I think you'd be the perfect fit for answering. So you did entrepreneurship. You had your own company after your MBA, which was not in Spain, right? Like you chose to be in Puerto Rico. Let's take Puerto Rico for an example, but also America. A big part of having your own startup is to bring your MBA network with you. How did you manage that in a business school in Spain? But my other additional question for you, if time permits, is what are some of the things, like maybe 2 or 3 things that you wished you could have done that you couldn't necessarily squeeze in during your MBA program?
Okay, I love that. Love that last question, especially in light of COVID and how it all ended.
Yes.
So, I think for your first question, it was definitely a strange decision, I would say, for most people to go to some place like Puerto Rico after having built up, my network primarily in Europe and spending two years in Europe. But I think that actually what you can bring back from such international exposure is so valuable to anywhere that you end up. There's this known problem, for example, in Silicon Valley, that there's a lack of diversity going into the design of these products and technologies, even into the AI, of it being a fairly homogenous group of people that are designing these products that are shaping our lives, right? We all have our phones and everything. But the benefit of an IESE experience is the exposure that you get to different forms of thinking. And all the business cases are, by the way, not centered on one region in the world. There's, of course, plenty from Spain and from Europe, but there's cases from everywhere in the world, and everyone, that incredibly diverse audience of students get to contribute their points of view. And I think that makes you a way more valuable entrepreneur or employee, just to have a widen and broaden your frame of reference for when the time comes to meet your challenges. In my case specifically, one huge takeaway from living in Barcelona, even on top of the layer of just IESE, was my exposure to sustainability, right? And this is where I tell you that that's what my startup is about, right? Vital is just a brand of daily use products, and the mission is to mainstream green. But that kernel of inspiration came from living in Barcelona, which was an environment where green innovation is way more commonplace, I can assure you, than in Puerto Rico, but also in a lot of parts of the US. So that perspective really was valuable. And then the three things that I regret, I think one of them was, there's this event, oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget the name. It's the sporting event, the IESE Olympics or something. Paula, if you can help me.
The Spring Games.
Spring Games, thank you. So those take place at the end of March, between March and beginning of April every year. And I was unable to attend the first year because I had visitors. By the way, when you move to Barcelona, you become super popular, just a fair warning. So maybe limit your visitors a little bit, because I was nonstop hosting. So one of them is missing the Spring Games, because then, COVID happened and they had to cancel the Spring Games and I never got to go. And I think another one was, I think especially the first year, you can get really focused on, Paula, maybe cover your ears. Of course, you need to focus on the academics and reading all the cases and everything, but it's also, the social piece is very important, right? And it's a hard balance to strike. And I think I, loosened up a little bit more the second year, but of course my second year was cut short. And now that IESE has these options of, less than 2 years program, like you just have to really make sure to YOLO, to take advantage of those opportunities to hang out with people, to go to that dinner, that Mexican dinner, and drink those margaritas, even though you have an 8 o'clock class. Because in the end, like I was saying, not only are these your friends from now on, but this is your network and this is your opportunity to bond with them. And I know that it's going to be complicated with COVID, and there's a lot of an online portion. But I would still encourage to find moments, outside of classwork and outside of focusing on those core curriculum to just engage and hang out with people and relax.
That was great. That answer had everything I would hope there was. So by the way, thank you so much, Laura, for making time. Thanks, Paula, for coming in. This was awesome. I'd just like to remind everyone, all the thousands of people who are watching this today, we have a couple of other schools coming up as well. We have Sloan, Booth, and Darden. We also have a profile evaluation session right after, and an alumni panel where some of my friends are coming at 11 Pacific. Just wanted to thank IESE again for partnering with us on the session today, and I hope you had fun. I clearly did. I'm going to go back to my day job, but thanks again so much for coming, and we'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Ovik. Thanks, Laura. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good to see you. Bye.